This is the Recycling, Scrap Metal, Commodities, and Economic Report, June 30th, 2025. U.S. weekly raw steel production rose to 1.787 million tons, up 4.9% from last year and up 0.2% year to date. The 50% steel tariff remains supporting U.S. steel companies. U.S. dollar weekly index. The U.S. dollar versus other global currencies. It fell to 97.2, the lowest point in about 3.5 years, which usually drives up commodity prices. This was on expectations of a slower U.S. economy, bringing lower interest rates. WTI crude oil price fell to $65.07 a barrel as geopolitical risk premiums faded. Also on Iranian oil sanctions, which were unable to stop their exports, saw higher global supply. U.S. weekly crude oil production rose to 13.435 million barrels per day, slightly off December's record. This was as U.S. producers remain cautious as OPEC Plus increases production. Higher U.S. production could bring lower prices and hurt oil company profits. The U.S. weekly crude oil rig count fell to 432, more than a 3.5-year low. This is on great productivity per well and keeping investments as low as possible, which brings higher profits. Scrap steel number one HMS composite price was steady at $311.67 a gross ton on a balance of supply and demand. Prices for July might remain steady. Hot rolled coil steel price rose to $44.10 a hundredweight, which is $8.82 a ton. Tariffs remain helping steel mills get higher prices. Copper weekly price rose to $5.12 a pound, near an all-time high on the lower U.S. dollar and on heavy shipments to the U.S. ahead of possible new copper tariffs. Also on reduced fears of reciprocal tariffs and expectations of increased Chinese stimulus. Aluminum weekly price rose to $1.18 a pound, which is $25.99 a metric ton, on stronger than expected Chinese demand. Also on bauxite supply concerns out of Guinea. U.S. May home building permits fell 2% to 1.394 million annualized. Higher mortgage rates and higher prices are hurting building. U.S. May personal consumption expenditures fell by 0.1% from April. It was lower after the surge of spending to beat higher prices due to tariffs. U.S. May goods trade deficit. It widened as in got worse to $96.5 billion. Still better than a few months ago on the import rush to beat tariffs. U.S. core PCE price index annual change. This excludes volatile food and energy. It rose to 2.7%, but only 1.6% annualized in the past 3 months. Increased inflation due to tariffs is expected, but it may only be a one-time increase. U.S. U of M June Consumer Sentiment Survey was raised higher to 60.7. It rose for the first time in 6 months. Expectations for personal finances and business conditions both rose. Wall Street's Dow Jones Industrial Weekly Average rose 1,612 points to 43,819, near the record. Wall Street is looking past the new Canadian tariff threats, and there was only a slight increase in inflation. Also on the new Chinese trade framework and positive consumer sentiment we just talked about. This is Greg Brown. As always, feel free to call or email me with any questions, and we hope all have a safe and profitable week.